So in the previous video, we were learning how to draw the nose. And I gave you a lot of guidelines. The first of which was when we talked about we have three spheres on our nose. You have the tip of your nose and then each nostril. Okay. We also talked about the eyebrows and how they correlate with the nose and the structure of the face. From the outside edge of the nose to the outside edge of the eye, and then straight up from the eye. This is your eyebrow. A good rule of thumb is to put your finger between the top of your eye and the other side of your finger is going to be about the right spacing for the eyebrow. The eyebrow is going to be parallel to the arc of the shape of your eye. Okay. Now, eyebrows can be shaped different ways. They can be shaped, at a hairstylist where they wax them into different shapes. They can be extra hair braided in. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. So you can be a little creative with the eyebrow shape. But from the front part of the eye, this angle. And we talked about how you can feel, if you run your finger over your eyebrow, you can feel the bone underneath your eyebrow. And it follows that arc and that circles around. Understand that in your drawing, these are all reference information things. You don't want to, on your final drawing, draw three spheres for the nose. That's not what our nose really looks like. The same thing on the eye. You don't really want this big circle where the eye socket is. That's just information for you to understand, guidelines that I'm giving you to help you to understand where things go. This first drawing that you're creating is like a map. I said that at the beginning, but I feel the need to remind you. This is guideline information for you to practice and then to improve upon to the point where you no longer need these guidelines in your picture. Specifically for this next part, because your nose line going from the outside edge of this nostril up to your eyebrow line, okay, it's going to arc to match that, all right? There is not a line on your face on both sides of your nose that outlines your nose. This is a reference point that we're using to learn where to apply the shading on your nose, okay, along with the spheres, okay? So you have a highlight on the tip of your nose. So this area here, when you're shading your nose to give it the illusion of 3D form, is going to be white. This center part here is also going to be white because that is the bridge of your nose. If you get a mirror, if you go to the bathroom and you look in the mirror, you will see a bright white or a very light skin tone, obviously, because your skin is skin tone colored. But you will see a reflection because that part of your nose sticks out further. So it's going to be white in our pencil grayscale drawings, okay? As well as the top part of the nostrils on either side, okay? You may have a small shadow right between your eyes, and what that shows is that it's growing back into space. The highlight, the tip of your nose, sticks out the furthest, so it's lightest. As your nose goes back further into space, you will start to see more shadows. Your eyes are set more deeply into your skull, and so there is shading around them. And that is what this circle and this eyelid line and the eyebrow all indicate as we're learning where things go. Okay? So right now, these are good references, thinking of the three spheres that make up your nose and understanding how you shade a sphere. But we also need to remember you've got a highlight and you've got shadow. This line should not be drawn on your face when you are drawing your more advanced copies. Right now, you may put it in there to help you understand where to shade, but on your final, it's not going to be drawn on there. So hopefully that clarifies the nose a little bit. So you have a nostril right here where these circles come together is one of your nostrils. Okay. It's kind of a comma shape. Everybody's is different. That's going to be one of the darkest parts in your shading. Okay. Then you have a highlight, which you can always bring your highlight back in. I've drawn so many lines here to illustrate for you what I was talking about. Okay. So I'm going to lighten all of these now so that I can show you the shading. Okay. So there's also not a line right here underneath your nose. There is a shadow, and it's one of the darker shadows because that's where your nose is flat on the bottom. Okay. And so a shadow appears there and gives the illusion of form. It's pushed back into space. Okay. As you begin shading, you may have a little bit of shading on the tip that's curved. Okay. You're going to have a little bit of shading on this nostril. As it curves back, it's darker. As it comes forward in space, it gets lighter. Okay. The darkest shadow is going to be the actual hole in your nose, the nostril on each side. The next darkest spot is going to be in this crease right here. So if you look in the mirror, you'll see that crease. From this crease out, though, is where the shading happens that gives the illusion of form to your nose. So this part here is going to be darker to contrast. And then there's some shading here, okay? Not necessarily a line all the way to the top, but there's shading there. The shape of your nose depends on the shape of your shadows. Okay, so if you want to give the illusion that you have a more rounded button kind of nose, then you would want to do a little bit of shading that makes it look round. Here's an example. Okay, it's hard to see with the, let me turn my light off, maybe that'll help. Yes, that helped a little bit. You can see, in order to make the nose look kind of round, I added a very, very light shadow to the top, and I accentuated the sphere-ness of the shading here. There's not a solid line all the way to his eyebrow, but there is shadow pushing this area, the bridge of the nose, back into space, and the highlight visually brings it out into space. So the shading around the eyes. Okay. If you wanted a more square nose shape, you might do something like this. Okay. It's a little flatter down here, not as rounded. This person has a wider bridge to their nose and a deeper shadow on the inside edge. Every nose can be different based on the shadows that you create. There's not really a right or wrong answer, but what you do creates the personality of the person that you are drawing. So this person's got kind of a lump in his nose, almost like maybe it got broken at some point, or maybe it's just kind of comes out and then comes back in and it's straighter on the end. Every single nose that you shade may be different. And we've talked about this in class. As you practice these things, so you just watched this video, and now you understand that I don't necessarily want you to draw the 3 spheres as you're shading a nose. So you go over here on the side of your paper and you practice some things. You can do this raindrop shape, smiley face, okay, parentheses. That's more what you see as far as like the basic shapes. And then you practice 5 or 6 different noses and you put the shadows in different places and you see what you get. Okay, so if I come up here and I keep it very, very flat, maybe even bring this down a little bit further because there is a shadow, where your lips come together here. There's a dip, okay, that may create a shadow. Okay, I've got a little bit over here. So you're going to practice numerous noses before you do this on a final one. Okay, and each time you do it, you can try something different. You guys know I don't like the word failure. So it's not a fail if it doesn't work. It's just part of the struggle. The struggle is how we learn. You have to struggle in order to learn new things. If you aren't struggling, then you're not trying for growth. Okay, so the struggle is part of the experience. It's not a failure, it's an attempt. And if you don't practice, then the question becomes, are you really trying to improve? Are you trying to learn something new if you don't choose to practice? Oh, this is an interesting shape that's coming about. So, and if you like it, then you leave it. If you don't like it, then you erase it. Okay, I got too far in over here. I'm going to erase it out. You're just learning this. I'm still improving. What we're looking for is progress. Does it look more realistic than the last one I did? If it does, hey, that's a win, right? Maybe there's some smile lines coming out here. Try that. Where would the shadows be? Look in the mirror, observe, see what you can see. Anywhere that you shade is going to push it back in space. And anywhere that it gets lighter is going to, you're showing that it's out farther. Okay. So when you are doing your mouth shading, it's the same thing. You don't have to do just a straight line. You can be a little bit more creative. Maybe they've got dry lips and they're wrinkly, but you're still thinking about the 3D form. The corners of my mouth are back further, so they're going to be darker. And that value scale is going to get lighter as it comes out, showing the depth. Okay, that illusion of 3D. The illusion of 3D is the difference between beginning drawing and as you progress. As you learn how to create the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality, that's where you really start to improve and you start to say, oh man, that looks real. That looks just like a real person. Okay? Even though we know it's an illusion, it's a two-dimensional illusion, but understanding how the shadows work allows you to create that illusion. Okay? And you think about the science of it, and your lips cut back into space. So this part is shadowed. This top lip is shadowed. The bottom lip comes out in space. So there's a highlight here. You don't want a big circle here. No, you want it to look natural. So, but you know it's darker back here, and it's going to get lighter as it comes out, and it's a curved surface. You're going to have a shadow along the outside edge. All right, same thing here. We know this cuts back in space, so it's going to be darker. And then it comes out in space, and we have a highlight somewhere up here, right, on our mustache area. Doesn't matter if you're male or female, you still have that area. Okay, and it sticks out. It comes forward in space, so it should be lighter. Okay, so as you practice and learn to do these things, then as you go onto your final, you say, oh, I really liked how I did that. I'm going to try to recreate it. And if I don't recreate it, if I don't manage to recreate it, maybe something else that I like will come about, even something I like even more, right? It's all an experiment. And sometimes experiments go wrong, and that's part of the experiment. And I know that you guys always want to have everything work out and look good and be proud of it. But you can be proud of a failure. I hate that word. I hate that word too. No hate, no failure. It's not a failure. It's the struggle. Okay, and it's the struggle that life is about, the struggle for growth. So as you struggle, you learn. And if you don't try new things and have them fail, struggle, there needs to be a new word invented for the struggle that doesn't work out. What is that? There's probably is a word. All right, you guys are going to have to give me some ideas here. So by shading this part darker, I'm pushing that back into space. My eyes are set back into my head. Okay, so my video is getting a little too long. I went overboard. Shocking, I know. So recap, when we're looking at the spheres and the parts that make up your face, understand that you're not going to draw in all of these guidelines. We're just talking about the structure that naturally occurs because of your skull and where your eyebrows grow and the size relationship of one thing to another thing. Always make room to practice. If you watch my video and then you practice 3 or 4 mouths or 3 or 4 noses or 3 or 4 eyes, and then you put them on your drawing, that's the perfect way to do this. Okay, have fun, you guys. Overall, over everything, make sure you're having fun with it.